I just wanted to explore a little bit further the sort of duty of care issue and whether you as committee members think that duty of care is dealt well with applications or research that uses online and social media.
It depends on the researcher and the context and the topic and all those things. Every case is different, but there's also been cases where it hasn't been dealt with well, and a general lack of acknowledgement by the researcher that there is a risk and that there might be a problem, and that not receiving complaints does not mean that there were no adverse effects. And so, just because we've used this method before doesn't mean that we should use it again if it was, approved by ethics committees in different countries and those kinds of things. So it can be dealt with well, but I do think that I think that the researchers have to acknowledge that, particularly if it's a sensitive topic, that it's hard to gauge levels of distress when, you're not there, and trying to put supports in place that give people that option, and it's a useful option if they need it, is actually really important if you're not there.
Just a quick comment which refers to this, but I think to a lot of things that have been said today, and that is especially for us lay members of committees, but I think others might have the same problem. We're not mind readers, and even though ethics applications, I know researchers think they're far too long and laborious, we read quite a few of them, and so we think they're long and laborious too. But it really is, I think, important that one of the things I look for, I suppose, is what I want to say specifically, is that the researcher actually acknowledges some of these issues. That's a really good start, and then at least we can work it out, because sometimes you think, has the researcher thought of this? And so sometimes, even though the application might be long and laborious, I think one of the things I look for, just as a sort of from a lay member point of view, is has the researcher actually thought of something, and so it needs to be actually in there. But just a thought.
In terms of duty of care, I think primarily the research we see, which is only using social media, would be classified as low risk, and that might just be our committee. The higher risk research we see is usually a combination of social media and then face-to-face interaction or other interaction of some kind. And so I think the duty of care questions step in at that level of the human interaction, and certainly they then get asked the usual questions that are asked around, what support will there be, etc., who will provide it.
We need to see that the researchers are demonstrating respect, not just respect within the research process, but respect for the participants. And so demonstrating respect for your participants is shown by not just saying, it's low risk. Thinking through, what would happen if, what would happen if? And some of those scenarios might be pretty, out there, but, if lay community members, we tend to say, I know someone who would fit the profile of your potential participants, and you try and think, how would they react, or what would they do, whatever. And a lot of the research is really lacking in demonstrating a fundamental respect for how the participants might respond or what might happen. And some of those things, it's like low risk, not low risk. You think about your standard risk assessment matrix, where it's low probability, low impact, high impact. Something might be a really low probability risk, but that doesn't mean it's a low risk if it's a high impact. And I think with the social media, there's a little bit of a potential to sort of, because we're not interacting face-to-face, there's perhaps a little bit of potential to step back from some of those risks. And like Peter, I just ask that the researchers demonstrate to us that they've thought through those range of risks carefully and have considered them. And it might be they can't do anything about them, or it's not the role of the researcher to mitigate them necessarily, but to demonstrate that they've actually thought about them makes our job a lot easier.